Hey there, welcome to Help Solve the Case. Today we are continuing our coverage of the Lindsay Clancy homicide trial, murder trial. The kids, a very, very sad situation. We are evaluating, we're not taking one side or the other. We evaluate here on this channel what the prosecution is doing, what the defense is doing. Are they doing a good job? Are they doing a bad job? Are they doing everything possible? What do we think is going to happen? Will the defendant be convicted? What's the judge doing? What's the perspective? What will the jury think? Do we agree with what's going on? And how will this ultimately affect us and the criminal justice system as a whole? And we learned from this. We're going to talk about some police procedure towards the end of the video, which we saw during the end of the day. So my name's Christine Burke. I'm a police policy, procedure, and culture expert, private investigator, and forensic genetic genealogist. And this is what I do on a daily basis. I actually work in these cases, and I love talking about it. It helps me learn, and hopefully it helps give you a perspective. So I appreciate you being here. Your support of this channel helps me donate my time to identifying the over 15,500 unidentified human remains cases across the United States and help identify suspects for our police in the hundreds of thousands of cold cases across the United States. So thank you for being here. Okay, so when we came back, we still had Patrick Clancy, the ex-husband of the defendant, on the stand. The state kind of came right in with a zinger and asked if he was aware of another suicide search on the computer. The Commonwealth, apologies, I'm going to call it the state probably. The Commonwealth asked about the call at the CVS and what Lindsay's demeanor was like. And Patrick said that she was pretty quiet and he felt that she was maybe bathing the children. And Patrick was asked, did Lindsay have any trouble recalling the reason for what he was getting at the CVS? No. How far was the CVS? About 3 minutes away. And we had some items entered into evidence. The CVS receipt, the Commonwealth is trying to establish the timeline. Then where did he go? He went to the 3V restaurant. We saw the 3V video, which got entered into evidence. The receipt from the 3V location got entered into evidence. And how long did it take for him to get home? About 10 to 12 minutes. And Patrick mentioned that he drove a Chevy Silverado and that Lindsay drove a Kia SUV, and that we saw some photos of the house. We also saw a photo of the kitchen island, which showed a big bag with a handle that reportedly, allegedly, was the takeout food. Patrick was asked what happened when he got home. He said the house was very quiet and he called out but got no answer. They went through a little dance about which door he came into. He stated that at that point, when there was no answer, he wasn't sure necessarily if Lindsay was home. He looked out the window and couldn't see her car because it's a black SUV. He called down to the basement. There was no response, and the door is usually kept shut. He was asked about the light being on, and he said the light is always on. And then he apparently called Lindsay on the phone. This was about 6:09 p.m. Again, the Commonwealth is establishing a timeline. He went to check upstairs, and the kids' room were empty. He went to his room, and the door was locked. And that's when he said he realized something was wrong. He said she walked him through getting the key. Apparently there's a key thing to open the door. He got it off the door to Cora's bedroom, I believe, opened the door and said he saw blood everywhere and the window was open. And they referenced a photo that was shown about what the room looked like. There was a photo of the bed, which the headboard appeared to be The bed was askew, that he confirmed it wasn't like that when he left, and it appeared that part of the headboard, like we look like this, covered the window, and so the bed was, let me do that so you can see it. The bed was like moved out as if somebody had to go around it to climb out the window, because the headboard, it seemed like it covered the windowsill, just guesstimating from what I could see. Patrick said the wind was blowing in. He said he only took 1 or 2 steps into the room and went outside. Apparently, he didn't say this. I'm assuming he put 2 and 2 together. The wind's blowing through. He can't find anybody. The window's open. He went outside. In the room, he said blood was everywhere, like it was sprayed with a hose. He said there was a huge puddle of blood on the floor and on the doorknob. So we got some more photos of the room for orientation. And he was asked by the state in a particular photo, I believe it was number 42, I'm not sure. And he was very distinct to answer. The Commonwealth said there is no blood on the walls or bed. And he said, not in this photo. He answered, not in this photo. Okay. So he's being very precise. Again, I believe that the Commonwealth had to call him, as I mentioned, because he can establish the victims, the condition of the house. He's the best, let me rephrase that. He's the most appropriate witness to do that because the defendant can't take the stand. But I believe he's more of a hostile witness. I don't want to say he's a hostile witness or he's been designated as a hostile witness. Even though the Commonwealth is calling him, he is not, from what we've seen, on their side. And he's been very succinct. He's been very circumspect. And from a witness presentation standpoint, has done a great job. When you answer as a witness, you're supposed to be very succinct and only answer the question asked. And he's been doing a great job. I will say at this point, too, that the prosecution has been doing a great job moving things along, not laboring too long, talking about pictures and different things. It appears to me to be being respectful that he is the father, that he has suffered a tragedy, and this is just a horrible situation. But we are not seeing what the Commonwealth, the prosecution, would normally establish from a victim, from a parent, which would be teary-eyed, lengthy discussions about how the victims were and all this stuff and all this emotional from the witness. We are not seeing it. It is very cut and dried. And that's why I say, I'm not sure, but the Commonwealth is doing what they got to do. He's responding appropriately and they're just getting through it. Okay. It is not typical for what we would normally see from a victim. Okay. The victim's family would be like all kinds of tears and what you've lost from all this. And they would really play it up. Okay. And we're not seeing that. The Commonwealth also asked if he was aware of the defendant's phone being found on the bed. He said he was not aware of that. He identified a photo saying it was the defendant's phone. He was asked how he went out the house. He said he went out the sliders and he saw Lindsay below the window face up in the backyard. Her head was closer to the house and her feet was away. Talking about there was a photo shown of the outer window. He was asked if the screen was cut or broken. He said no. He was asked about, did he see her injuries? And he said he saw deep cuts on the wrist and a line across the neck. It was discussed that by the Commonwealth, it was brought up that she was not bleeding and that he was not aware of that, but he later learned that he had said that or something to that effect on the 911 call. We did not hear, the 911 call. So I think the Commonwealth is trying to make this very important that there was not blood. Now, it looked like there was snow outside. This was January. I don't know from an EMS. I've had some EMS training. I don't know about coagulation of blood, stopping bleeding, the fact that she had a cervical fracture. I don't know how that plays into that. The cold if something would have happened, some type of trauma to stop that. But I think where the Commonwealth came in the opening statement, that which the defense is attacking, that her injuries were very superficial. So I think that the Commonwealth really wants to establish that there wasn't blood. Remember, Patrick says there's blood everywhere. There were some photos with significant blood, the bloody knife and all that. But I think the Commonwealth is trying to establish it wasn't as bad as you thought it was. That's where I think they're going with that. There was discussion about talking to the 911 operator, that he didn't feel that he needed to apply pressure, that the 911 operator told him that. He was asked if he spoke to Lindsay. He asked what happened, and she said, "I tried to kill myself." He asked, "Where are the kids?" And she said, "In the basement." There was no discussion about, I also unalived the kids. And it was about 4 to 5 minutes for the first responders to come in and out to get there. It was my understanding, what I took from it is that when she said the kids are in the basement, he certainly was not imagining that they were not alive. Otherwise, he would have run in there. I believe it was his understanding. Again, it was not brought out, but I believe that what I took from it was that he thought she was the only injured party. And so he was staying with her, believing that the kids were okay in the basement. He said she was in and out of consciousness, and he was on the phone on 911. He then went to the basement, and the state said, the Commonwealth said, "Were you aware that you were still on the phone with 911? He said he was not. Ultimately, he found out he was. Excuse me. And this is the bad part. I can't imagine. He said he went down into the basement and he saw Cora, and they did the layout of the basement, and she was face down and she had an exercise band around her neck. He tried to take the band off. There was discussion about how this was tied, and the agreement of the delicate description was that, like when you go to tie your shoes, the laces on your shoes, you have the two laces, you fold one over the other, and you pull it before you make the bow. So it was just that's not a knot, but it was, they put the exercise band like this, and it was pulled tight. Okay. Can't imagine. And he got no response from her when he took it off. He saw Callan next to her. He had a band around his neck and he was face down. He removed the band. And then he went to try to find Dawson. Dawson was not in the main basement room area. And he found Dawson in his office. And he said immediately when he saw Dawson, he knew he was gone. And he also had a band around his neck. He went back and forth. He tried CPR. EMS came and took over. I'm assuming that when he got down there, again, referencing the 911, we could not hear it, but he must have been screaming all kinds of holy heck. And they must have called EMS, who was outside treating Lindsay. 911 must have called them and said, "Come into the house," because the EMS came and took over, and they sent him upstairs. Good call. Got to get him out of there. I can't imagine. We could not hear the 911 call. Trying to remember, he left at one point, I believe, so that they could play the 911 call. They were being sensitive to what he was going to hear and what he wasn't going to hear. And we did not hear it. The kids were removed to the hospital. He did see the kids at the hospital. He was asked by the Commonwealth, did anyone ever at any time tell you not to leave the children alone with Lindsay? He said no. In January of 2024, he was asked, did Lindsay tell you that she wanted to harm the kids? And he said no. There was discussion about a call from the defendant a week after this incident. Not sure if she was arrested at this time, what type of facility she was in. And she told him that she had heard a man's voice and that the voice was telling her that she was going to lose her chance. He was asked if there was a mention about it being a moment of psychosis, and he said he didn't recall. He was asked if she mentioned the children. She did not. And he mentioned that he did not even know what psychosis was prior to this. So that word was not in the vocabulary, or it had not come to his attention prior to this. And he was asked if Lindsay had told him about hearing a man's voice prior. The state then said, I have no further questions, just exhibits. And that's when Patrick left. They played the 911 call and they went through the clothing. And he was not there for that. I will say the Commonwealth was very perfunctory, if that's the word, pulling. I'm not sure why we had to see the clothing, because I don't think that we have photos to match up from that day. Maybe they're going to be body camera footage. I'm not sure, because we don't have, to my understanding, any type of bleeding or injury or any damage to the clothing. So I'm not sure why we had to do that. Maybe the Commonwealth wanted to show how small the children were, defenseless the children were. I'm not sure. It was bad, but the Commonwealth did a good job, very perfunctory. Like I said, pulled it out, held it up, put it back in. Pulled it out, held it up, put it back in. We saw Cora's clothing, which was pajama pants and a shirt and a pink robe. Lindsay, the defendant, she was like this. Okay, the camera's over here. And she wasn't even looking anywhere near it. One thing I wanted to bring up that I noticed from the prosecution, from the Commonwealth, is that as she was going through this evidence, she was not changing her gloves. She did have gloves on, but just a point of, sometimes at different parts in this process, when evidence is brought in for hearings and different things, there could be cross-contamination for not changing the gloves. Now, I said to myself, this is the trial's going on. There's no blood, this, that. It seems like it's not a defense of somebody else did it, somebody else got into the house or something like that. But I want to let you know that I immediately noticed that the procedure for changing the gloves and not doing cross-contamination did not appear to be done in this case. And so if in the future items wanted to be tested independently for God knows what, there could be cross-contamination. That's how it happens. So for all of you that are watching, that is something to look for when evidence is brought out, because if there is a retrial or a retesting, like we're talking about in Scott Peterson and we're talking about in the Koberger case and all that, even though it's in the prosecution and it is at trial, the evidence still has to be preserved. So I did make a note of that. Okay. And Lindsay was the attorney, her defense attorney was holding her hand. She seemed to be having a really hard time with it. We then saw Dawson's clothing. It was some dinosaur underwear with a gray long sleeve shirt. We saw Callan's pajamas, which was a red onesie. Like I said, it was I don't know why it was necessary, but I feel that the Commonwealth didn't belabor it and did it. Then the exercise bands were brought out and identified which was on which child. I'm gonna do that. They played the 911 call. We did not hear that. And then before they played the 911 call, the judge, and if you want it verbatim, I can get verbatim. The judge spoke up to the jury and was pretty emphatic, would be the word, about not having an emotional response to the 911 call, referencing sympathy, empathy, that he was instructing them to separate emotional value and not be influenced. The only thing that they could be influenced by were the facts, okay? Not anger, prejudice, or pity. And he wanted to remind them of that. So they had to remove all emotion from what they were hearing. And he said that again later in the trial, he would remind them of that. And he was very specific about an order saying that it would not be recorded or broadcast or reproduced in any way by the media or the public. Okay. And during this was going on, we had the video, we did not have the audio. And Lindsay was sitting with her head in her hands. It was very obviously upsetting for her. And then they took the recess. When they came back, the Commonwealth called Angela Krause from CBS. There was discussion about a 4:48 p.m. call from a female looking for Miralax. There was identification made about 2 places in the store, Pedialax, where it could be found. The call was just a few minutes. She described it, Ms. Krause described it as normal interactions, and that she later assisted the police in pulling the surveillance video. The defense attorney did not question Ms. Krause. Then we had Soraya Sweeney Shelgren. She was the hostess at the 3V restaurant since 2019. The Commonwealth asked her, did she take a call at 5:10 p.m. about takeout? Yes. Was it a woman? Yes. 5:54 p.m. was the order picked up? Yes. They showed the video with Patrick Clancy, and the defense said he didn't have any questions. Okay. So after that was done, Patrick came back and was cross-examined by the defense attorney. He talked a little bit about, now I will tell you, so even though Patrick is the state, the Commonwealth's witness, he is going to be, which we saw, sympathetic to the defense. And it's a little messed up. And I'm trying to explain why. But if you watch the video, we can see a marked difference with more emotion and freer discussion. And he obviously feels very comfortable with the defense. Okay. He is, if we have to say, even though he is a victim, he's on team defense. Okay. And we'll talk about that. He was asked a little bit about how he met Lindsay. Let me back up. The defense attorney immediately went into, hi, Patrick, this is not the first time that we met. As a matter of fact, we met after the police finished removing items from the house that he met with Patrick's brothers. So I don't know when the police removed the items from the house, but that is very quick to hire a defense attorney. Okay. And the defense attorney was there, and he starts to talk about how they went through the house. All right. Just to give you the setup of who's who and kind of how this went down. Patrick was asked about how he met Lindsay. She was at the MGH Institute in the nursing program. The defense brought out that she had a double major. She was a good student. She became a registered nurse, and she was in the labor and delivery that she started in 2014. And I think they had met about 6 months earlier. Lindsay loved being a nurse. And the defense attorney asked about, look, the Commonwealth asked you previously about her anxiety and that fact that she didn't want to go to work. And he said, no, she loved her work. This is all she wanted to do. Her anxiety was about leaving the children. She wanted to spend time with the kids. It wasn't, they were painting the picture that it wasn't that she hated work. It was the fact that she was leaving her kids at home. It was asked about the first, kind of weird questions, asked about the first pregnancy, and Patrick elaborated. Like I said, he's going to be more forthcoming because he's on team defense. And although he's a prosecution witness, I don't want to confuse you with that. This is my take on it, right? But he's obviously more comfortable, more forthcoming. When you're a witness and you're talking to the other side, the other team, you have to be as succinct, circumspect, pay attention to the question, and only answer the minute thing that you're asked. If you watch some of the video, you will see he's very forthcoming. He's much more at ease. He is obviously on team defense, even though he's called by the prosecution. Okay. And it's good to know because you can learn in the trials when you watch this how people are responding. Okay. And it's a little flopped in this case because usually the victim is the prosecution witness, and he is the prosecution witness, but he is, I don't want to say, because I don't think he was declared a hostile witness, but he's definitely not on Team Commonwealth, even though he is a victim. And he may not feel he's a victim of a criminal act by Lindsay. Okay? Innocent until proven guilty. Psychotic episode, we don't know. Okay? Just pointing that out there for future cases. All right. With regards to Cora's birth, he was asked about that. He said that Lindsay had no time for an epidural and she bled a lot. The defense actually introduced an item of evidence where some Lindsay's handwritten notes, which indicated her first delivery and the first delivery of the first child for her, like a career highlight. And the child's name was Cora. They had referenced that in the first thing. And that's why they named their daughter Cora, to commemorate that was the first baby that Lindsay had delivered after becoming a nurse. Patrick described her as a dedicated mom. She was reading books to the kids at 3 months. They made up songs. The defense attorney showed a bunch of photos, playroom photos, pictures of kids, stuff all over the house. Asked Patrick, she took hundreds of photos, didn't she? And talking about Facebook photos. And in fact, that the dining room wasn't a formal dining room. It was a playroom for the kids the defense attorney showed. I think he was trying to show that she was very invested in the kids, that the house was dedicated to the kids, and there was just artwork and things in different rooms in the house. The defense attorney brought up a picture of this purported night out where in the first direct examination of Patrick, the Commonwealth was like, in fact, you and Lindsay went out this night to celebrate your anniversary. And he said, no, if you remember me talking about that. And so the defense attorney was referencing metadata and the latitude and longitude of where the photo was taken and when it was taken. And talking about, in a good sense, metadata. If you don't know what that is, they need to be seeing more of it in cases. I use it all the time. And the fact that just because it was on a list in a phone that was pulled, that does not mean maybe you shared it with someone or whatever. That is not the date that the photo was actually taken. Okay, so he was right up on that, which is good. They talked about how in September of 2022, that Lindsay began experiencing increased stress and anxiety. She went to see Jennifer Tufts, thought she was a psychiatrist, and the defense made reference to this August 22 unaliving internet link visiting on the laptop, right? That is, the Commonwealth is attributing to Lindsay. And the reason this is very important in building the state's case, remember, the Commonwealth is saying, look, this is what they appear to be saying. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but look, she has a long history of this. This was not some random psychosis incident caused by the medicine. She's been dealing with this mental health issues for a very long time. She had it in nursing school, blah, blah, blah. No big deal. It's been going on for a while. Therefore, and again, these are my words, She's used to dealing with it. She knows how to deal with her daily life with this, knows right from wrong and all this stuff. She has criminal culpability. Okay, that's the picture that they're trying to paint, I believe, from what I'm seeing from them pointing it out. Okay. So that's why the Commonwealth had asked Patrick about this internet search on the Surface Pro tablet in August because the medication apparently did not get started being taken until September. So if she didn't have an issue prior to that, she shouldn't be looking up unaliving stuff, right? Okay. So that's the connecting the dots to the states, the probable cause that the Commonwealth is using to show the intent. Remember, we've got 2 counts in the first-degree murder, the premeditation and then the extreme atrocity. So this is the premeditation that was going on for some time. So the defense now is coming back and asking Patrick about it and saying, he had asked earlier about him being a musician, something like that. Are you familiar with, I think he said Tim Hall. And then Patrick says, you mean Tom Hall? He's a country singer. Yeah, he had a new album. I was checking it out. I was listening to his songs. And the defense attorney is talking about when you Google or you bring up Tom Hall, there's a Wikipedia article about it. And the defense attorney referenced that Tom Hall unalived himself. And so therefore, what I believe that they were trying to show, there was not, in my opinion, enough particular detail, no screenshots or anything like that I could see, that trying to say that he, in researching Tom Hall, Patrick could have inadvertently clicked on this link. Okay. Then they talk about Lindsay starting on Zoloft. The defense attorney says, well, she didn't hide it. She told you about it. She had to use the meds, right? She was trying to get better, referencing that conversation on the sidewalk at the wedding. Now, this was different and described differently. Leading question about, she told you about it, right? She told you knew she had to take the like the medication, whatever, which was different than the way the Commonwealth presented it. If you remember, the Commonwealth presented it like, oh, Patrick, you didn't know that she had already gotten the prescription. When you were talking about it, she said she wanted to go see the doctor. Remember that? No. So the defense just kind of came in and said, look, you are aware of this. Okay. Then he was asking about how she was dedicated to taking her medication. She had a diary that she used to keep how many milligrams, the date, the reactions, and talked about her keeping that in the kitchen. Then they showed a picture in the kitchen of some books in a shelf. And the title of this book was, it appeared to be, the portion I could see is Good Moms Have Scary Thoughts. And I don't know if that was a diary, whatever it was. The defense obviously wanted to ask some questions about that, but Patrick said he didn't remember it. That was not getting in. Okay, so I don't know what those questions were or whatever. Then the defense asked Patrick about the nurse, Julie Paul. I think we weren't sure what she was, that it was very brief that they saw her. It was referred by Patrick's mother. This was possibly in October. Again, that Patrick's mom was a nurse in the labor and delivery area where Lindsay worked. And then they had to switch to this Rebecca Gelada, and they only had one visit through all of this. Lindsay only had one visit in person with the doctors, and that was Rebecca Gelada with Patrick. The rest of them were on Zoom. They referenced COVID and stuff like that. He was asked about reactions to Zoloft. It was worded as his observations because he's a lay witness. He cannot testify to side effects or psychiatric reactions and stuff like that. So he's just an observer. Patrick talked about insomnia and that it was a huge problem and that Lindsay had not slept for 48 hours. It was disturbing for her and it was hard for her to function. So after they had seen Nurse Paul, she was on the case, in my words, for about a week at most. And then Nurse Paul got reassigned. And that's when Nurse Gelada came on the scene. Gelada put Lindsay on Seroquel and Ativan, which is a benzodiazepam. I don't know, I'm probably not saying that right. And Patrick mentioned that he's aware that's addicting. He stated that these medications affected Lindsay negatively and that she was getting worse on the Seroquel. Lindsay told Dr. Gelada they were on Zoom, and these Zoom calls were typically 20 minutes. So as we talked about it, Patrick mentioned, like, look, we need to do something about this. I want to meet with you in person. I'm sure we can figure this out. They went in early December to see Dr. Gelada. Lindsay was extremely sleep deprived and highly anxious. Patrick described that she would rock back and forth with her head under a pillow on the couch, and this was in early December. They increased her Seroquel significantly, and she was then given Valium to taper off the Ativan. His goal, says Patrick, was to get her on the right medication, right? They wanted to fix it. Lindsay was put on 400 milligrams of Seroquel to help with the sleep. That's why it was bumped up. And I did research it, and it said, I believe Seroquel is for schizophrenia and bipolar primarily, and a dosage between 400 and 800 milligrams a day. So you guys can Google that. Let me know if you find something else. I just wanted to ask about that. They discussed Lindsay going to the Women's and Infant Behavioral Health Center in December. That was on December 20th, right before Christmas. And Patrick described that Lindsay was scared to go when she was admitted, and we had discussed that in the previous video in the Commonwealth questioning, that after going to the ER for the second time, or after going to the ER the first time she was recommended to go over there, she was scared to go. He took Dawson skiing that day. He got a call from Lindsay to come pick her up. At this facility, they did not prescribe anything, and the doctors told him that it was not the right fit for her. I don't know if we're going to hear from these doctors, whatever was going on. These doctors did not reach out to Dr. Gelada. Lindsay was only there for a half day, and she came home, and her parents were staying at the house. The defense then brought up this sleep gummy, this gummy. And if you remember, or if you listened to the other video, the state who was painting a picture of Lindsay not being forthcoming with Patrick had referenced again the conversation about going to the doctor and getting on Zoloft, that she had already done it without him knowing it. Now the state, also the Commonwealth, had brought up on direct that when Lindsay went to the ER, she failed to tell the ER doctors that she had taken a weed gummy. Okay. So now on cross, the defense is saying, look, what do you know about this weed gummy? Does she smoke pot and all this stuff like that? And he was like, no, I didn't know that she took a sleep gummy, but it's a sleep aid, and we do have them in the house. He was asked about McLean. That was the inpatient facility, that it was a lockdown. Lindsay went there on New Year's, And after going to the ER for the second time, he was very clear. He told her, you have to go. You have to go. This has to get fixed. Then in talking about the reason, Lindsay, remember the state said she didn't want to stay there. Again, the Commonwealth is painting the picture of she's not taking her medications, she's changing doctors, she's lying, she's not telling, she's withholding information. Let me not say lie. I'm paraphrasing, she's withholding information, and her husband's not being given the full picture here. So he was asked about why she left McLean. And the Commonwealth had said, when questioning Patrick, trying to get it straight in my head, was talking about why she wanted to leave. She was there 3 days. Nobody had talked to her, hadn't seen a doctor, this, that, and the other. And then if you recall, the Commonwealth was like, she saw the doctor this day, she saw the counseling this time. The Commonwealth had a list of all the interactions, right? And so Patrick, this is the defense, talking to Patrick, he said, look, when I went there, the workers were behind plastic and everyone was playing with clay. He said he only saw Dr. Goodhart, or he only talked to Dr. Goodhart on the phone. That is the doctor from McLean, the inpatient facility, and that Dr. Goodhart told Patrick she's clearly depressed, referring to Lindsay. Patrick said that Dr. Goodhart recommended some medication. He thought it was Cymbalta, and he and Lindsay were told to check with her doctor. The defense then brought up the fact that a 5-day stay at McLean was standard. It was not that Lindsay was leaving against medical advice. And Patrick was asked about the Cymbalta, and Patrick said all we were told was to Google the Cymbalta and basically look it up for yourself. They then had Cora's party and things were fine. The defense brought up that Lindsay was actually named godmother of one of her friend's children. He referenced that they obviously trusted her enough to step in and manage their kids, trying to rehabilitate her character here. And talking about all these friends and associates and all these people in her life that she had. They then started to discuss the horrible thoughts that Lindsay started having, that she was very emotional, and Patrick, was working in the basement approximately a 40-hour week. They talked about Dr. Jennifer Tuff's records, the CBS list, and they were asking about the bag of medication that the Commonwealth had gone through the day previously. It wasn't yesterday, but it's in the previous video when Patrick was on the stand. If you recall, going through that video, the Commonwealth took the position and tried to illustrate, again, my analogy of this. Look, we have this medication and she only took, I'm making this up, 4 pills. We got this one, she only took 7. We got this one, she only took 6, trying to show that she had all these prescriptions but was not taking the medication, that this was intentional, okay? That she was, I don't know, doctor shopping, doing whatever, that again, she had the presence of mind, and it wasn't that's where I feel they're going with this, that it wasn't a medication mix-up or psychosis due to the medication. It wasn't a temporary thing because she wasn't taking the medication. So she wasn't under the influence of the medication. That is what the state is trying to show. Now, Patrick, with the defense, talked about the fact that no, he was told by the doctor, because when they were adjusting doses and changing medications, that because these were like narcotics, they're scheduled drugs, he was told to take those, right? That they would give her new prescriptions at higher doses. And so there was no confusion. He was told to take it and turn it in at the drug drop-off. That's why he had all these bottles in the car. So yes, she would take 5 of them, have a reaction, call the doctor, they would change it. He would pull the discontinued, that's what we call, he would pull the discontinued prescription bottle and put it in the car. And so every time this happened, he ended up with a bag of med bottles in the car. And that bag was the one that the Commonwealth presented to say there was only 4 taken here and 6 taken here and whatever. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but they only took 4 out of 30. She's not taking the medication. The medication couldn't cause it. Okay. So the defense then says the police went to your house with the search warrant, right? Yes. And the defense says, so there were drugs all over the house that were seized by police. Yes. But it was Patrick that turned in the ones from his car. So it sounds like the search warrant was not inclusive of Patrick's truck and possibly Lindsay's car. Not sure why. But he maintained that he kept that bag that the Commonwealth went through. He maintained he kept that bag in his truck. The defense then brought out this, looked like a white box. It was actually, they said it was the nightstand drawer. And this was like a zinger. He pulls it open. He asks Patrick if he recognizes it. He pulls it open and he starts talking about pills, and he starts pulling out pill bottles. He pulls out and he's reading it, and I tried to write them down the best I could. He was going fast. Here's a prescription for January 5th for trazodone, and he's shaking it. It's empty. Here's one for January for Seroquel. It's empty. Here's another one for January. It's empty. I couldn't catch what that was. Here's one for December 21st for lorazepam. It's empty. Here's another one from December. I couldn't catch what it was. It's empty. And here's one for January, betazapine or something like that. And they're all empty. And this is important. Let me not belabor the point, but it's important. First of all, you're freaking searching a house and you're taking some medications and you're not taking other medications. I don't understand that. Okay. The bedroom window is open. You've got a knife, a bloody knife with a mom with knife cuts that appear to be self-inflicted, and you're not searching for medications. You take some of them, but you don't search the nightstand right next to the bed where the medication would be. And what the defense attorney said in the cup, they had showed a cup where they found crushed pill residue. Okay, I'm a police procedure expert, right? I'm like, what? Okay. And they didn't search the car. So I'm not sure what was going on there. Haven't seen any documents in this case. Crazy town. It gets worse. Okay. So let me go back to this because this is the important part. So in the opening statement, the Commonwealth theory appears to be, and they have to get over that premeditated hump. So the defense has appeared to present a diminished capacity defense, or is alleging a diminished capacity defense based on some temporary psychosis caused by an interaction of these drugs. Something we can look at, like you take a sleeping pill and you get in your car and you fall asleep, or you pass out, or you take a sleeping pill and you have a drink out at dinner and you have a DUI, or God forbid you hit somebody and it's caused by the medication. It's still DUI, but it's caused by a medication. Maybe you have a reaction to a medication and you have a seizure and you pass out and you hit somebody. Okay. So there can be all kinds of reasons behind that were not intentional, that the medication caused some type of bad reaction. So the defense, it sounds like they're putting on this diminished capacity that she had some, whatever it was, psychosis, I don't know what they're going to call it. They're going to call witnesses, but something happened that she had this spontaneous psychosis and did this thing. She heard this voice and she did this thing, and she did not have the criminal culpability. She could not control herself because of the medication. Okay, that's kind of where they're going with it. The state, remember, they don't have to prove anything. All right, innocent until proven guilty. The state has to prove she intentionally did it. And that's why they're trying to talk about all this planning. They're trying to say it wasn't the medication. Medication had nothing to do with it. She was fully probably going to say she's devious. She's hiding stuff from things. She didn't tell the doctors about the gummy. She didn't tell him that she was already on the Zoloft. She's flopping around to all these doctors. Look, she called him at the CVS. She was fine. Okay, where I'm going with that. Okay, again, we're hypothesizing. Okay, now this is important because the Commonwealth brought up that bag. They brought up the bag that defendant's husband turned in. They did not show us any medication yet that was taken by the police that would show the breadth and depth of what appears to be. And they flashed that CVS list of medications that were all within a couple weeks. It's crazy town. Literally, it's a huge mess of mind-altering medications, okay? And so the Commonwealth is trying to say, look, she didn't take any of them because we have all these, right? They're shaking the bag. We have all these bags, 4 here, 2 here. Here's 30, here's 60. She only took 2. She didn't take any of these 30, all right? But we haven't seen the rest of what was in the house. That was only the defendant's husband's car and what he voluntarily turned in. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bottles of more stuff empty in the drawer by the bed. Where do you take your pills at night? In the bathroom, by the bed. And they didn't take them in. I could argue some things, Brady, some other things. Why did they not get them? Why did it have to take the defense to find it? Okay, that's talking about police procedure and exculpatory evidence and all sorts of whatever that is. But that's for the defense to argue. And we don't know if they argued that or whatever. But it gets worse. Okay, so that's where I'm going with that. Why didn't they, if the drugs and the not taking the drugs are so critical to the case, and the drugs are potentially exculpatory, they have a mandate to do that. But why, if they're going for drugs or the lack of drugs, or drugs is the essential theme of the Commonwealth's case, why didn't they get the drugs? Sorry, I have belabored that point, but it's very important. Okay. So he's going through this drawer, and then what is this? Do you recognize this? And he puts it down, and it's the defendant's Apple Watch. And he asked Patrick, did they seize it? And he said, no. And there was discussion. The defense said something to the effect of, but the data from this Apple Watch was used for the defendant's heart rate or something like that. And they said yes. Now, critical, in my opinion, piece of information, because when you have something that is captured, this is critical for the cases. When you have something like my microphone, like my camera, like the DVR or the DVD or the thing that is capturing the surveillance video, you have to take the item that is recording the information to make sure that you have the integrity of the item recording it properly. It is the authentication. It is the chain of custody. It is how the information got from point A to point B. And I don't know if the defense motioned this, but we see this all the time in the criminal cases, that the police just take a photo of a video surveillance camera in a convenience store or something, and they don't get the original data. You can't verify the authenticity of the data of the machine that captured it. What time? Is it accurate? Whatever. So whoopie doodle, it's recorded to the cloud. Okay? Very important. I'm very shocked. Very shocked. I'm not, because the drug things were in the drawer too. But okay. So that's interesting. I wonder if they challenged that prior to on a Brady or something like that. There was also a face mask for sleep, which could show that she has problems sleeping, so she tries to cover her eyes, and some pillow spray that can help you fall asleep better. Sometimes it's like lavender, peppermint, or I don't know, whatever. All right. And then that was put into evidence. And they said, the defense asked him, she only had one Apple Watch, right? And he said yes. And he said, so that and the empty pill bottles were not seized. He said no. And then they brought up this little green vase thing, and they were, so sidebar, so something happened with that. He asked about a nighttime dump diary. Was she asked to write down her feelings and what transpired during the day? He wasn't sure about that. They went through the schedule. They went through some of the notes, which were very specific from Lindsay. And Patrick said, look, it's not controlling. I find the schedule very helpful. It works in our household. Okay. And they showed something about the outside window and an orange ball under the window frame. He said he had a woodpecker and he had to fill the hole. So he filled the hole with foam and he identified some blood on the edge of the first floor window. I'm not sure where that is going to come into play, but that was the defense's redirect of Patrick, the ex-husband of the defendant. Now, we had the Commonwealth come back on, and they're harping on this timeline. For some reason, I mentioned it previously, and she's asking him about an email that he sent to his coworkers on January 23rd and at 5:24 p.m. And she questions him, and she says, you said you either sent it from the Surface or from your iPhone. He said, yeah, I don't know. And then she's getting kind of aggressive with him, and she says, but you saw yourself on the CBS video at 5:32 p.m. So how do you not know, basically, I'm paraphrasing, how do you not know that you didn't send it from the house? And I'm thinking, like, Lynn didn't send it. What's the big deal? And she says, you were clearly out of the house. Okay. They talked about a text about Pedialyte at 5:15 p.m. They talked about at 5:32, he was walking into the CVS. And let me just tell you, the surveillance video can be wrong, and the timestamps are frequently wrong. And again, I don't know why she's getting so up in arms, because the camera could be wrong. The timestamp on the camera could be wrong. The timestamp on the phone could be wrong. The timestamp in the car could be wrong. The timestamp on the text could be wrong. What is the big deal? So she goes through this whole thing with him. And here's my question. I started. Do we even know if the video time is correct? So I don't know. She's trying to pin down something about the timeline, and I don't know. And we haven't seen anything from the defense about the accuracy. I don't know if we're going to have somebody authenticate all these surveillance videos and whatever. We did have the store clerk from the CBS say, is this the video from the store? And she said, yes. I don't know if they're going to get into that nitty gritty and how much of a point that the time frame, like in the Karen Reed, John O'Keefe case, man, they were like harping on the seconds, right? And the phone movements and stuff like this. So I don't know how much they're going to get into it. We heard a little peep of it because of that Apple Watch. I don't know, but she's harping on this. They talk about him going to Boston. Then he and Dawson went skiing. She brings up the hitting home again about, look, you had plans for your anniversary. He's like, well, yes, but we canceled them. And she was saying, I'm not making this up, that you had plans, to go out for the spa day and the dinner. I didn't make that up. You're not saying I made that up. And he's like, no, I'm telling you, we canceled the plans. We were at home. So I guess she was a little hot on that, but she got caught unawares or whatever. They showed some text about the spa day. She's all butthurt about that. Apparently, her ego, she's butthurt about that. Again, time frame, timelines. I don't know where she's going with that. The Commonwealth referenced a statement that Patrick made that Lindsay always took her meds exactly as directed. And she's like, you didn't see it. Were you standing there every time she took it? Like, how could you say that? And he's like, that's what I understood. She's very good about that. And the Commonwealth was like, well, you just know that's what she told you. So again, harping on this is what she said. This may not be what she did. Then the Commonwealth is going after this country singer thing about the Tom Hall. And I guess it's Tom T. Hall. And the state says, the Commonwealth says on August 23rd, on the Surface Pro tablet, there was in the Facebook account, the Facebook search for the country singer. And I guess she's getting at that, I guess because it was in the morning, that he couldn't have done it. And that there was a search, and again, not in exact details because we haven't seen any screenshots or anything like that, that there was the unaliving. And that at 9:40 a.m., someone signed into Lindsay's Facebook account, and then the Tom T. Hall site was accessed. And then that person had to go to the unaliving methods, and they spent 3 minutes reviewing the methods of suicide. And he's like, look, I don't go into her Facebook account, but I'm thinking, is it reasonable? Is it plausible? Is the defense, because we're playing, who's playing a good offense and defense? Is the defense going to challenge that and say, my Facebook is always open on my phone, right? I don't close it down and lock it down. So if somebody came onto my computer and typed in Facebook, my page is going to come up. Now, because they shared the computer, could her Facebook page have been up? I'm just saying, reasonable doubt. That question was not asked. The exact mechanics of what went on and when he was working and what he could have been doing at 9:40, I don't think that they have fully investigated that potential issue. I would go at it in a different way, but that's me. So we don't know. And then Patrick's saying, that was 4 years ago. And then the Commonwealth says, did you research a bridge in Australia that people use to unalive themselves? And he was like, no. So maybe we'll have a computer expert that will go more into that. Then they talked about the McLean. This is the Commonwealth bringing it up again. Could she leave? They referenced the fact that when Patrick came to visit, it was after hours in the afternoon. It wasn't there during the time she had therapy. Was he aware that the staff was checking on her every 15 minutes? Was he aware that she was able to go to walk with the staff? So again, trying to elaborate this, what you were told was not what happened according to what the Commonwealth feels. They talked about, if you remember, the defense was talking to Patrick, and Patrick said Dr. Goodhart from the women's, was it that one? I don't know if it was that one. Yes, it was the McLean. Talked to Dr. I believe it was Dr. Goodhart, that there was no prescriptions. Remember, he was supposed to Google the Cymbalta or whatever, but the Commonwealth pulled up the CBS records and saw that the trazodone was filled on January 5th and the lorazepam was filled on January 5th on the day that Lindsay was discharged. So there was prescriptions there. And there was also another prescription for amitriptyline or something like that on January 16th and diazepam on January 9th. So that's 4 prescriptions after leaving McLean, which I don't know, it seems like it would help the defense case, but who knows? But the Commonwealth came back and said, were you aware that Lindsay was weaned off the Seroquel at McLean, the inpatient facility? And were you aware that she was only prescribed the 3 meds? So again, the Commonwealth is getting at, look, she wasn't on all these medications. It wasn't the medication. Okay. She was just prescribed these things, right? And Patrick said the CVS printout is a good resource. So I don't know who's going to win that battle, but they are going back and forth on that. They talked about the empties. They were going back and forth about she took 7 of these and this and that. And he's like, look, I wouldn't count on that because I was just keeping that because they kept changing the other things. He also referenced that she was switched to Prozac and that all they were doing was trying to figure it out. He's trying to say, look, all these medication switches and all this stuff, because we're just trying to fix the thing and figure it out. And that during the trips, when he went on, I guess he had a business trip and then he went on a trip with one of the kids, her anxiety was high. And then the Commonwealth came back and said, but on January 24th, the day of the incident, you said that it was one of her best days. See me blinking? Eyebrows? Take that. The Commonwealth also said, yeah, no, the watch wasn't collected, but it's linked to her phone, right? So they're trying to rehabilitate that. The Commonwealth also said, you previously stated that the window to the ground where Lindsay went out was 20 feet. No, would you be surprised to know that it's only 12 feet? So there's a difference of 8 feet. Who knows where that came from? He said, I never measured it. And then they talked about notes and different things that the scheduling, the Commonwealth went into. She was very articulating about how detailed the notes were. Cut the veggies up in 1-inch cubes. Make sure he goes down at 11:35. She was just reading all these notes about specifics and kept harping on it's very detailed, isn't it? I don't know. Some of you guys know some of us are very detailed. Some of us are not. Is that really proof beyond a reasonable doubt? We don't know. And that was it. The defense, so the state excused him. The defense said, oh, this list thing, that was with Elaine, that was with the nanny that was only there for a certain time, and then she went to take another job. It wasn't enough hours, and blah, 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 and they rested for the day. So different particular things that I'm catching. What are you catching? Let me know. Are there things that I'm missing? Do you think right now, as we go, let me know as we go, do you think that the state is going to be able to prove the premeditation? That's what they've got to prove, right? Remember, right now, she's innocent until proven guilty. What do you think about, what do we have? Several pieces of evidence that have not been collected. What do you think about that we haven't seen the time frames verified? I don't know. Okay, we'll see you on the next one, and we'll just keep on watching, and we'll see how what we learned from these cases we can apply to other cases with our critical thinking, our case law, and things like that. And thank you for being here and supporting the channel. I'll see you next time.